A person was pleasuring themselves with the handle of a scissors and it got stuck. 911 operators, what are some of the funniest things someone has called in for? I once called 911 because I cut my finger and wanted to talk to my mom, who was a dispatcher. I called crying asking to talk to her by name. She was more pissed at my dad for not waking up when I tried to go to him first, haha. Was a 911 operator before becoming a paramedic. Had a lot of funny ones, but by far my favorite involved an all too common problem of a kid getting a hold of a locked cell phone and only being able to dial 911. It was Father's Day, mind you, had this particular kid, about 5 years old, call in at least 6 times, but he'd never stay on the line long enough for us to get a good ping on his cell phone. It was probably about 2,200 local at the time, not early but not too late in the night. Long story short, we were finally able to get him to stay on the phone long enough by talking about how his teddy bear was sick. We asked to speak to his parents and he told us they were in bed and the door was locked, so we asked him to go knock on the door. He then told us he had been locked in his room. Okay. I think we know what's going on now. By this point we had an officer en route to this kid's house to go make sure everything was okay and to tell his parents the kid has been calling 911. The officer arrives on scene, a few minutes go by. Then the officer comes over the radio and says S120 back in service, the teddy bear is 10-4. The officer made his way up to the comm center and proceeded to tell us all that the kid's dad answered the door wearing only boxer shorts and was more than a little agitated when he found out his son had been calling 911. Apparently the dad had been getting his Father's Day gift from mom when the officer showed up. Numerous calls where someone has handcuffed themselves to a SO during coitus and lost the key. If it's not busy, this seems to draw most available officers. Not me but a coworker. A person was pleasuring themselves with the handle of a scissors and it got stuck. A little kid called 911 because he wanted the cops to come arrest his brother. You see, their mom said that the caller's brother was supposed to share the Legos, but he wasn't sharing. The caller's brother said that he was playing with all of the Legos, which wasn't possible. There were too many Legos for one person to play with all of them at once, argued our caller. Therefore, his brother was a liar, a jerk, and a turd and we needed to come and arrest him. We had a high degree of confidence that this wasn't a coded request for help, so we asked to speak to an adult, confirmed that there was no distress and closed the case. Share your Legos, kids. P.S. If your kid ever calls 911, don't get mad at them. We want them to call 911 if they think they need to. We would much rather have them call 911 for something silly than have them be afraid to call 1-800 because they think they'll get in trouble. Had a grown man calling in about a monster trying to get into his son's room. He's the right kind of frantic where I know it's not a mental health crisis, but I still couldn't figure it out. Well, he's a Middle Eastern male with a real thick accent and I was having a hard time understanding, so he gave the phone to his son. The monster had climbed a tree and was at his bedroom window. And it was as big as his dog. And it has hands like him but tiny. Wait, what? Right there I told the kid to see if it had rings on his tail. Yes, they had just moved to America a month ago, and had never heard of raccoons. I couldn't mute myself fast enough, and the father heard me laughing. I think that's what helped calm him down. I explained what a trash panda was and welcomed him to our wild jungle. A man requiring extrication from an Under Armour insulated shirt. His shoulder popped out of the socket while he was pulling it on. It was halfway on/halfway off and his arm was locked and dislocated. So you don't think I'm awful? He was laughing, and said I would have driven myself to the hospital but I would have had to drive with my arm out the window. I don't know if this counts as funny. I'm from a small town. Everyone knows everyone. My Uncle Jim is a cop. All the dispatchers and first responders know my grandma pretty well. One day, my uncle was working on something electrical in the basement. He was shocked. He was unconscious, but he ended up being fine. My grandma called 911, and screamed into the phone, "V. It's Kate. Jimmy's been shocked." What V? The dispatcher heard was, "Jimmy's been shot." Every single police officer, sheriff's deputy, EMS, paramedic, firefighter, and park ranger in town arrived at my grandma's house. My uncle was super confused and embarrassed. I was a 911 dispatcher years ago but had two specific calls that still make me laugh. A frazzled mother called cause her 6-year-old had gotten into the roof and she couldn't get him down. She kept screaming about how we need to hurry, not because she was worried he would get hurt, but because he had done the before and last time he peed in the air vents. This was before weed was legal in my state. but a college kid called asking for an ambulance. He was super worried that he was having an allergic reaction to the weed he just smoked. When asked about his symptoms, he said, "I just can't stop eating Cheetos." My sister once called because she wanted to know who would be on the other end of the line. I couldn't hear what the person said, but I heard my sister's parts of the convo. "Sister, hello? Who's this? Oh." Then she hung up on the operator. They ended up calling back and my dad picked up and had to explain that his daughter was just being curious. I briefly worked as a 911 operator. When someone called on the non-emergency line, we always answered the same way: police and fire, this is a recorded line. How can I help you? We get a call on that line. I answer as usual and a very inebriated sounding woman asks the following. Hypothetically speaking, if my boyfriend had a few grams of cocaine and I called the police to tell them about it, would either of us get into any trouble? Ma'am, you're calling the police on a recorded line. I know, but what does the law say? I don't know, ma'am. I'm not a police officer. Would you like me to send one? Yes, please. She gives me her address. An officer responded, but there were no arrests. That one had me scratching my head. When I was a fire dispatcher, I had to send a squad to remove a C-ring. So there's that. My dad used to be in charge of the 911 call center. One particular story I remember was in like '09, some guy called asking how much weed he could have in his car while driving through the state. They went back and forth for maybe 20 minutes of the guy repeating and rephrasing the question and my dad just responding none. Not me, but my wife, who works both as a secretary for a fire department and as a volunteer firefighter/EMT. A lady calls asking if she can donate a building for a training burn-in. After asking questions, she finds out it's not a building but an RV. More questions. It's not her RV, it was abandoned on her property. Just a few more questions. It's not exactly abandoned. It's her ex-husband's RV. And he's living in it and won't leave. She wants my wife's fire department to burn it down. Wife's fire department declined. Actual 911 operator here. So far the silliest was a guy who called, all concerned about the number of birds flying around because there was an air show nearby and he was worried the planes would hit the birds. Not an operator, but I have to share my experience. The area code in my city is one number away from being 911. So when I was 6 and trying to call my dad from the home phone, you can imagine my surprise when I heard 911, "What's your emergency?" Turns out I got the area code wrong and it called the police instead. And my 6-year-old shocked brain decided it would be a good idea to just hang up. 20 minutes later, I hear my aunt, who was in a room close to the front yard, yell, "Why are the cops here?" My parents had to explain to the police what was going on and the cops gave me the friendly reminder to not hang up when you accidentally call the police. My parents, however, weren't as forgiving. I am not a dispatcher. But when I was a child and like 6, I called the police from the home phone and asked if they would come play with me because I didn't have friends. So they showed up, because they have to respond, and I got a lecture from the police and my military parents about the seriousness of calling 911. I was the EMT who pulled the printout that just said off-duty PD call in. Man gave name God Jehovah Moped. The man was surprisingly lucid and coherent. That's also not his legal name. I asked. The spirit gave it to him that morning and he was really excited to share it with everyone. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Hit that like button if you liked this video. Please subscribe for daily stories of real life experiences. See you in the next video.